Welcome to PK Woodworking, and welcome to a continuation of the discussion around the shaper accident that happened last week. So I'd first want to say thanks for all the kind words from most of you about the accident and all of the safety stuff that you guys talked about and brought up. So I wanted to go a little deeper into this because I kind of left some things out possibly, and then I've got that part from Aigner back in so we can dive a little deeper into what the Aigner integral fence really does, and maybe make sense of what the instructions say from Aigner. So anyways, I want to also start with talking about this machine. So this is a Felder Format 4 Profile 45 Z X Motion shaper. Could they make the model number any longer? Probably not. Anyways, this is a 2022 model, and when I ordered it, it did not have this cool touchscreen display. It had a regular display that they had, similar to what looked like on my old sliding table saw, which I guess I could post right up here for you guys to take a look at. And in the middle of production, they had a delay because they were moving to this screen, which was like a bonus for me for sure, because I didn't pay anything more and I got, I think, a lot more functionality out of the machine. Anyway, all that remains to be seen. What about the rest of it? Well, it is a 10 horsepower, 3-phase shaper, and it has the ability to tilt 45 degrees out away from the fence. There are some shapers that only go forward, which I guess some people say is dangerous. I don't know. I assume it would be not that dangerous because the highest end shapers right now go both 45 forward and 45 backwards. So it takes certain cutter heads that you have and makes them a lot more versatile to be able to take a shape or a cutter head and move it forward or backward. You can take a straight cutter and turn that into a chamfering cutter just by moving it to whatever angle you wished to make it work. So anyways, this is a sliding table shaper also. This has the smallest X-roll slider that Felder makes on the front of it, which allows you to use this to slide it back and forth when you're doing tenoning or when you cut an end piece with. There's other ways to do that also. They sell as part of this a tenoning hood, which I have back there on the wall. And then they also have the ability to put a tenoning table on it that mounts directly to this slider, which gives you a surface to reference off that goes onto the cast iron part of the surface, and then keeps the pieces of wood from fluctuating or doing that while you're doing some shaping. So that is this shaper. It also has a couple of things that I've added to it. I've added a couple of pieces onto the side that hold these extensions from Felder that give you a longer in-feed and out-feed. They're removable. And then I can swap them for the Aigner ones if I want to that go farther out. And the cool thing about the Aigner ones also is that they have the ability to mount stops in them. So you can do a started kind of cut on the shaper. Those go out even farther than these cast iron ones do. And I've used them a few times. Attached to it is a power feeder. This is a Comatic DC40 power feeder. It's got 4 rollers on it, and I think it's got like 60 speeds or something crazy like that. It's a DC motor, and it doesn't take very much power, so it runs off 110 or 120 volts, whatever. Now, if you go on to like Shop Gear's site or whatever to look at Comatic feeders, they will call it a DC 400 when it's attached to the smart stand that I have this attached to. And the difference between the smart stand and the regular stand is that the height mechanism to raise it and lower it is right in front of you instead of all the way at the back of the arm. So that's just the difference between the two of them. It's way more convenient to have it at the front. It also has an indicator you can get for it so that if you know you're going from one size of like stock to the next size stock, you can move the feeder up and down appropriately. I also got, as part of buying the shaper, something that Felder sells, which is the swing away arm for the shaper. So the way this shaper works, if you're wanting to use it without the fence, or if you want to change a bigger cutter, is that this whole fence mechanism releases and tilts backward away from you, which is really a cool feature. Some shapers also have a feature where you undo a couple of locks and it slides away. Martin has it like that, and SCM has it like that as an option. I don't know if it would work in my shop because I don't have that kind of space to stick a shaper out into the middle of my shop. So this seems to be okay. I didn't have to pull it away very far from the wall, etc. Okay, so that's the shaper per se. Let's talk about safety when it comes to the shaper, okay? So for me, using a power feeder with a shaper is like a no-brainer. Yeah, it adds a lot more money to the cost of a shaper, but the fact that the machine is running the pieces of wood through it versus your digits is a good thing for me, a positive thing for me. So I don't know if I would even own a shaper without a power feeder. There still are times that you need to run parts through your shaper without a power feeder, like if you're testing something or doing something like that. And there are jigs that people make to make that work. And then there are also ones from that same company I've been telling you about, Aigner. Like, you'd think I'd be somebody who's sponsored, but I'm not. This is a jig from Aigner. They make this one and then a bigger one that basically would run along the fence this way, keep your hands away from it, give you some protection here. And then it has a clamping mechanism right here so that you can clamp a piece in and run it through. The longer one is better for using something that's a longer piece of wood if you're trying to get a different profile on that. I want to get some tighter looks at this also so I can kind of maybe explain more. And I apologize for the sun that's coming through that other side. But both of these parts on the shaper right now, these fences, again, they're called the integral fence system from Aigner, and they're removable, and so you can loosen this up. I'll do it from this side to show you. And after you loosen it, they're slidable, so you can get them closer, farther away. But after you move them a certain distance, they come out. They're heavy. They're very expensive addition to your shaper. So these are definitely something that I would call as a, I don't know, like a luxury piece per se, although I'd call it super important from a safety perspective. And these get the same kind of functionality you'd get from a zero clearance fence. Like, a lot of people take a piece of wood, bolt a piece of wood to the shaper, and then move the shaper fence back into the cutter so you get a zero clearance through it. And then what happened to me wouldn't have happened. So these give you the ability to do that without having to constantly make those fences. And then you just reattach it, tighten it up. One thing I found after getting the new piece from the new little integral piece that bent and screwed up from Felder was the way that this attaches to this machine probably leaves something to be desired. So if I look at this and I like loosen this up, I've got this really tight right now. I'm gonna loosen it up. Okay. And then I'm gonna take this and move this also. When it's not tight, it actually rotates and back and forth a little bit, which left for some gap here at the bottom, which was maybe what our problem was originally. I wanna show you one of the features for this that is really cool about it. So you're running a piece and like this, like say you have this small piece and you're trying to run that across the fence. And as you're running it across the fence, you notice it's not gonna hit one of these little parts that are stationary. You can move this fence up and down to make sure that you're hitting it. So if I'm down all the way here under the ground, I might miss that. It might go in there and then we'd have the same problem we had last time, right? Which would be bad. So these are movable on both sides. And why would they be movable on both sides? Because when you're doing this and you're trying to get them to go across, you want them to line up. And so you'd have them lined up by basically moving them back and forth with that. After you get them to where you want them to be, then you would basically use this bottom part right here to clamp it in place. Normally you'd have it all the way at the bottom. So in this case, I want to talk a little bit about this filler strip and also what we found out over time about the filler strip. If I can get it back out of here. Okay. So I'm going to show you some pictures that are closer, this instruction manual from Aigner, which are all pictorial, which the cool thing about pictorial kind of instruction manuals is that they can give you a lot of insights if you spend a lot of time looking at it. So I did spend a lot of time. After I got this, I started to do the same thing I did the new piece on the last one, which was I started to peel this off, and then I started to read some of this. Hopefully this gives you a nice picture, but it says in GB, which would be English, it says top. So this is the top, which means, like I thought, this piece would go under in this direction. And then I'm going to show you some of the pictures also more closely, but I'm just going to show you this in general, that they also show this in this direction with the little grub screws pointing up when they're extended. They tell you that you got to use the little outside screws to get it flush. And then they're showing you expanding it to get it underneath there to stay. One of the things that they also show is they show that they're trying to keep it off of the rings of the actual shaper. So they're trying to keep it back farther so it's not where the rings of the shaper are, because I think they're probably making the assumption that they're not very accurately put in, and that might create some drama, etc. So anyways, regardless, I think for me, there's some opportunity to get this set correctly. If you have these too high, it forces them down a little bit, like, you know, at an angle, and then it creates a sharp piece that's not flat with the front of this. So there's a fine line between this being out far enough and then out too far and creating an angle that goes down. But what I did find is that when you get it in there, and I probably have them a little too far out currently right now because I was playing with them last night. But when you get it out there like that, and then you clamp this thing down, if you get this really clamped down pretty hard, this thing is not coming out. Like, there's no way for it to come out. So what I think if we can take away from is that I probably didn't have them down far enough, and I probably didn't have this thing tightened all the way. And as you can see, it can rotate a little bit. Even when I've got it clamped down, it moves a little bit. Going forward, I got to be really cognizant of, like, having this up a little bit before I start, clamping this all the way down, making sure I've got it all the way down when I clamp it, and then rotate this down to create a little bit of pressure. And then in that case, I get a lot of pressure, it doesn't move back and forth, and now I'm not going to have that situation happen anymore. Now, it does show later in the pictorials that I'll show you in a second, then you can, in fact, move this out farther. It shows it moved out farther again, out here to being in a place where the fingers are kind of lined up over here, so that as the piece is coming through, it doesn't want to dive in. This is the part. Again, this is made to go into one of these areas right here, like this. It gives you the ability to, like, jam it into there with this feature right here. And then it also allows you with this little grub screw to push this away from the backside. And it almost creates a lip, so that if you're doing some kind of work like a rabbit or something like that, that this can be in here and support it outside that way. My friend Steve from the Extreme Woodworker showed this on one of his. He also showed how to use this on one of his videos, but I don't know that he ever ran any product with it on it or not. I don't remember, but haven't used this yet. So I think I've got this solved, so I don't have to worry about this popping out anymore. Again, I think I do have this probably a little too far down, because you can see it does not want to come out when you put it in there, because I think those grub screws are a little too low. So I'll put it back up a little bit. I got some information from somebody that will remain nameless that you're supposed to have it down probably around 1 millimeter. I think I probably have it a little bit more than 1 millimeter right now, but it does not call out a dimension in Aigner's, any of their information in this. It's purely pictorial. Their safety advice is just be safe, basically. Check its operation, use prescribed equipment, blah, 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 blah. Let's address some of the safety stuff. So a lot of people talking to me about safety glasses. So I have at least 5 pairs of safety glasses. I believe I probably have several more sets that probably aren't the greatest safety glasses. I have 3 pairs of the 3M. I have a set of these Spy Plus ones that are actually true like ANSI glasses. These are also prescription, so that I can see up close. I want to get another set of them that let me see close and far, although my eyesight's pretty decent, you never know. And then I've got some ones that are all over the place. The challenge I've got in general is that I have not built this as a rhythm to always use the glasses, and I need to do that. So if anybody sells a, I don't know, 3D printed attachment that lets you hang these things off your machine with a magnet somewhere, like, and if you haven't done it, invent it, please, because I think it would be great for me personally. So there's that. Now, I want to also talk about gloves, because there was a whole lot of conversation about gloves. So first things first, I have like a condition. I'm probably allergic to some of it. It really creates like dry skin really bad for me, and cracked skin, and sometimes you'll see me with a Band-Aid on. It's not because I've hurt myself, it's because my skin got so dry it cracked and it started to bleed. So I try to use gloves as much as I can to keep myself from touching the wood that might give me some kind of allergy or whatever, or skin condition or whatever. I've tried every kind of cortisone, every kind of whatever for years. It's just something, I have allergies in general, and I think that's probably part of it. Now, the other part about these gloves is that it is important for some things. So this company Rangate that I have most of my tooling from, these are insert tools, and these insert tools are incredibly sharp. And so they actually sell you these so that when you pick them up, you don't get yourself cut. And so you are actually using, like, kind of, whether you like it or not, gloves with a shaper, because you're not going to pick up some of these sharp things. They're like razor sharp, and be playing with these cutter heads as you're putting them on your shaper. So you are going to be using gloves whether you like it or not. I do understand what people are saying, that there's definitely gloves and a spinning tool are probably not the best thing to have next to each other. I'm going to be cognizant of the feedback that I've been given and do my best to not have that on when I'm near a cutting surface. It makes great sense. Some of the other things that people brought up at the same time were about using an outboard fence. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but there's a really great video again from Steve, the Extreme Woodworker, where he kind of shows what that outboard fence would look like. But let me show you a couple of other things that are available to do the procedure that I was doing in a different way. I got these pieces machined for me from, I think, a local machine shop that somebody at Felder had turned me on to, one of the salespeople. And I don't know if he's still making these anymore or not. There are some other people, if you're part of the Felder's owner group, that are trying to convince somebody to make something like this. But the one that comes from Felder that I actually have installed here is a little less, I guess, precision made. It moves around a little bit. So these are way better than the ones from Felder. And then getting a piece of Baltic birch, You pin these down in here with some grub screws, and there's actually a couple of places that Felder gives you automatically, 3 places where you could do it with theirs, but these work slightly different than that. So you'd put these down here and you'd use a grub screw to pin it down inside this so it doesn't move back and forth. And then you can get a piece of Baltic birch that's like yay big. And again, Steve at Extreme Woodworker does a great job of it. You route 2 slots down the middle of it, and then you'd have 2 kip levers similar to these that screw into it. And then you can slide that piece of wood back and forth, and then you can take it to put the piece of wood, instead of against the fence, you can turn it so that it's actually riding slightly off the fence against the face of that piece. And then you'll turn your power feeder to push against this. And then you have a fence that's complete. It has no breaks in it along the way as you're running all these pieces along the front. Other companies used to make these. For some non-good reason, they stopped. Let me show you another way to solve this too. So this piece right here is sold by Felder, and this is made to go on this actual extrusion right here of the X-roll fence. And what it does is it just kind of fits inside here. It's got a way to lock it, and you can lock it wherever you want, like say right there, and now it's locked. And then the cool part is these Aigner rollers right here can be put inside this, tightened down with this little piece on the side, and now you have a way to create pressure against the front with these rollers. And then this right here is adjustable, so you can basically slide this thing out and in as far as you want and get it as close as you want to whatever you're doing. And you can actually use it to keep pressure on it. So you can use it on this side, you can use it on this side. Aigner makes ones with 4 rollers. They make them with as many as you want. So there's ways for you to use things from other companies to keep your little digits away from cutter head. But again, it all comes back to one thing. Like, you still got to protect the rest of yourself. So if you're doing something out here with all of these parts, then what protects you from the rest of it? Well, when you're not using the power feeder, then there's another part of the shaper that's here too. And this is actually part of what comes with the Felder Format 4 Profile 45 ZX Motion, which is another thing that's from Aigner. And this is a guard that comes down and is adjustable. And not only does it basically protect you from anything that's coming off of that cutter head, but it actually has a way to create pressure against the fence. So this is adjustable forward and backward, up and down, and it creates pressure on the fence. And then this other piece that's in front of it that I'll try to show you, if I can, by lowering that one down. That piece is a pressure piece that holds the product against the table as it goes through. So if you did it the way that we're looking at right now, and you lowered down this, you pretty much could run something through here with these pressure rollers. Maybe you'd have the pressure roller in the center, maybe you'd have it to the side, whatever you want. But you could run a test piece against the fence, really be solidly protected against something happening, because this is a very thick piece of, it looks like Lexan. Same thing for this piece in the front. And there's really only a couple of little spaces up here where something can come out at you. And then you do need to have some safety glasses on. So that's all the safety things that I know that are built in to my Profile 45 shaper. But I do want to talk about a couple of things that some people talked about that I didn't use and I probably should have. So this is a extension fence on the shaper. It didn't need to be here on the shaper when I was doing this. So probably actually would have been better if I would have not had it here and I would have taken it off and just not have this in my way. It probably would have been smarter to just be running it this way. This shaper has one E-stop, and the one E-stop that it has is right here. So when you have the e-stop clicked in, it tells you the emergency stop's on and it tells you which one you've got that you've pressed. And then you have to twist it to get done. I used the power off button right here to turn it off. Here's the thing. On this shaper, it's got a braked motor. So regardless whether or not you're using the emergency stop or you're using the power button to turn it off, it doesn't slow down any faster or do anything different. The brake is electronic, same speed regardless. Now I have e-stops on other machines that work differently. When I hit the e-stop on my wide belt sander, it's got an actual, like a car disc brake, and it brakes incredibly quickly and differently. So when something goes wrong on that, you want to go for the e-stop. I got some feedback that I should have used the e-stop. I agree 100%. I should have hit the e-stop. Whether or not it was going to be any different, just to program myself to use the e-stop in that kind of case. So I should have used the e-stop. Straight up. And I have got some of Max clamps recently in that I'm going to install on the slider that are going to give me the ability to also use his clamps to clamp things on here. So again, my little digits stay as far away as I can from what I'm doing on the slider. I'll show you. Max clamps or AirTight clamps, whatever, we all call them Max clamps. Again, not sponsored. Paid for this. I have another set coming for my new table saw. I sold them with my old table saw together because they're kind of that desirable. So regardless, I don't have these completely set up. I literally got them and attached them to show all of you. But this one actually would be spun around the other direction because there would normally be a fence that it would go against. And then when you push this, it will push the piece of wood against the fence and push the piece of wood down so that you can slide it through, okay? And then you can individually turn these things off and on. And same thing here, although this little thing sometimes gets stuck on the metal, but doesn't do that on the wood per se. And then you can do it together as in a combo, which is you're gonna hit this and then they'll both do it at the same time. So. This is what selects it to be by itself. So now this individually does its own thing, and then this controls this part. And if you had this one like this, it should do both, but for some reason it's not. So I got to figure that part out. So, but regardless, there are a lot of things that you can add to a shaper to make it really safe if this is something that you're scared about. So I know that I probably took this out way longer than it needed to be, but all I would tell you is that there is ways to be safe on a shaper. So do it. Thank you for watching PK Woodworking. The last video was one of the most popular I've had so far, especially in a week's time. I'm sure it has something to do with the content, but I wanted to make sure I covered the rest of safety with this. So hopefully you got something out of it. Don't know if it was enjoyable as the last one was, but I did learn my lesson. I just haven't decided if I want to wear these ones or some other ones. So again, thanks for watching. Have a great one, and we'll see you on the next one.